This is turning out to be a great harvest. I have to remember one thing. If I want it to continue producing more and more beans, I have to keep picking them when they're young. If I let them in the vine, usually the plant starts to think that its time is done, that it's done its job of producing seed for the next generation. So if you keep picking the pods when they're still young and do that every other day at least, you're going to ensure that you get a longer harvest, a greater window of time to be harvesting. That being said, these look delicious. I gotta go in and prepare something nice and do them in a very simple way, but that I feel it explores the bean pods at their best with their actual flavor without interfering too much. But I do want to get a bit of another herb to counterbalance that, and that's basil.
Up until now, my first crop of beans grown in my new garden bed had been stellar. While I expected my veggies to grow strong considering they were receiving much more direct sunlight than in my last garden, it still surprised me just how well they were developing, while cramped in a protected raised bed, having to share their space with sun-hungry okra plants. Just a few months earlier, I had nothing growing in this yard other than grass, and now I was eating fresh vegetables and herbs picked directly outside my door. This was true local eating. I wanted to do justice to these fresh beans, so I wanted to cook them up in such a way as to enhance their flavor. First, I needed to clean them up, removing the ends and any strings along the sides that may have developed. This Old Homestead Pole Bean variety is not the best to eat as green beans, as they tend to form tough strings, but if you pick them young enough, they will be tender through and through. In order not to lose any of their flavor, I decided to stir-fry the young bean pods instead of boiling them. I drizzled a bit of olive oil in a pan, let it warm up slightly without burning, and then dropped the cleaned up string beans into it, making sure to move them around. If tomorrow won't come and the future's undone, your dreams become foregone. Then I sprinkled salt to taste and covered the pan with the lid to allow the pods to sweat until al dente. I washed a handful of purple basil leaves and chopped them roughly. I finished by dropping them into the pan so they would release their fragrance. Weave then yourself a song. Some pain endures for long. Immediately removing the pan from the heat. While I still love simple steamed green beans, this method of cooking them forms complex, savory flavors that are delicious. And you can use whatever herb and spice you like the most. A web of struggle spun. Keep calm and carry on. I could forecast lots of future harvests as summer started to trade places with fall. And indeed, as weeks passed by, I got to harvest green beans several times. But eventually there were too many pods to gather at once, and I knew that the weather would turn sour in the coming weeks, so about a month before the usual last frost, I allowed the plants to retain their maturing pods so I could do a last large harvest of dry beans. As goldenrod carpeted the land, I went out to harvest dry beans for winter use. What I like about this pole bean variety is that it produces really well for a small space, and because it is a pole variety, it makes best use of vertical space. While it can be enjoyed as a green bean, it is as dry beans that they shine. I'll be back right after this commercial.
Fall is fast approaching. Actually, it's already here. Even though we've had rather warm temperatures in the past weeks, finally it cooled down a little bit. And as I see the beans are in their last leg, they are starting to dry up. And I don't know if it's actually because of the cold weather, since there are a few green leaves still, it appears more that it's two things: a response to more pods that are mature and drying. Usually when any kind of seed starts maturing on an annual plant, it signals the plant that it's time to stop production. And it could also be the fact that we had several weeks of dry weather with barely any rain that mostly signaled them that it was time to ripen. And beans ripen best when it's a little bit dry either way. So I'll harvest what I have. I've had several little harvests of green beans throughout the season, and some harvests of beans that are mature, not completely dry. But these ones I could probably store, although I really don't think they're gonna last that long. I'll probably eat them very soon, just because if you like beans, there's nothing quite like freshly picked new beans. They're just more buttery and less mealy, and I know they're not gonna last much. But one thing I should plan for the future is to actually plant more of these and probably harvest more. They produce a lot for their size. I just need to maybe tweak a bit the configuration so that they can produce more using less cage space, if you know what I mean. Maybe get them to grow outside the cage on top in a way that still the groundhog and possibly deer can't get to them. We'll see what the future holds, but for now I'm happy with the results.
I could say that this year's bean harvest was more experimental. In future seasons, I would love to grow more of them to store and use during winter. While a few bean vines may be enough to grow fresh green beans for summer use, you need to plant several vines if you want to stock your pantry for winter with dry beans. Beans are a calorie and nutrient-dense crop that doesn't rob soil from nutrition. So growing them is a must if you are striking towards self-sufficiency. The best way to ensure that they store well is to allow them to fully mature and dry up on the plant. Also, try to pick them on a dry day, since picking wet pods may lead them to spoiling. I wasn't having the best luck with that.
And just as I started to harvest, there comes the rain. What kind of bad luck is this? It hasn't rained for weeks, basically. And right now, as I'm harvesting, as the bean pods are dry, rain comes. Well, I'll wait a little bit. I don't know how long this rain is gonna really stay or how much rain it's gonna dump, but hopefully I'll still have some time to harvest the pods, because I know it's gonna rain more this week. If I don't harvest the ones that are dry, they might start to rot. They were in the perfect stage to be harvested. It seems like the weather is not trying to cooperate with me much this year, but I can't complain. There's still a lot of stuff that I was able to harvest and grow, and I know the next year hopefully I'll have better luck and even greater harvests.
Hoping for an even bigger harvest is a gardener's perennial wish. In early spring, we deposit faith in our plants, hoping that they will reward us for our hard work. Most of the times, they do. And as harvest time comes, we partake in the joy of natural abundance. The rain started to wane as quickly as it had appeared, so I knew I had a short window of time to harvest all the pods before they got completely soaked, increasing the chances of them molding. While they had been hit by a few drops of rain, they would be fine as long as I allowed them to completely dry up inside before shelling them. With harvest safe inside, the colors of fall began to fade and soon gave way to days of oblique winter light and morning frosts. The garden finally retired for its hibernal slumber.